G'day humans, Chris Stead from Finder here, and today I'm reviewing the Sonos Beam Gen 2. Now 2020 and 2021 have been big years for people sitting on the couch and watching TV and playing games thanks to COVID and lockdowns. So Sonos has updated its 2018 era Beam soundbar with Dolby Atmos support and eARC compatibility. But does that bring it up to modern standards? Let's find out. So let's start by taking a look at who the Sonos Beam Gen 2 is aimed at. Now this is a mid-tier soundbar. You can get soundbars for under $300, which are, okay. And you can get soundbars right up to $1,500 and more here in Australia. This sits at $699 here in Australia. Now as you can see, the footprint is really small, and that's part of the big appeal here, is that it's really good under small TVs or in tight spaces if you've got a small apartment or not too much space in your living room in which to place it. There is the Sonos eARC, which is the premium model in the Sonos brand. It's a heck of a lot bigger and has packed with a lot more speakers and a lot more sound. However, what this does is it brings Dolby Atmos and eARC compatibility to the smaller footprint and allows those on a moderate budget to be able to access those next generation features. However, as I'll go into in a bit, it doesn't quite hit the mark in the audience it's trying to reach. Okay, so let's talk features. What's inside this little beauty? What we have is a 5 Class D amps in a 5 array speaker setup, 4 elliptical mid-woofers, 3 passive radios, 1 central tweeter. It works with the TruePlay system for iOS only though, unfortunately, no Android. You got Alexa and Google Assistant, and the mic's been improved over the Gen 1 Beam. You got NFC setup, the aforementioned eARC support, touch controls across the top, and of course it works in the broader ecosystem that you have with the Sonos. And I'll show you, I've got the Sonos Roam here, for example, and one of the ideas that they came up with when they were taking me through this product during the original briefing was that you could have this set up inside with the football on, and people could be watching TV with the football, and then you could have the commentary also running through this out by the pool or out by the barbecue, for example, which is a pretty fun use case, and that's part of the Sonos ecosystem, which makes all the Sonos stuff work well. If you're in that ecosystem, you can plug anything into it. But most of the upgrades are all focused on the Dolby Atmos. So you've got a 40% faster processor in here, so it can do a lot better at kind of decoding and breaking down that audio that's coming through. And you've also got the 5 speaker array. You used to only have 3 in the Beam Gen 1. So now you've got 5, so you've got one that's focused on height and focused surround. And that all adds to being able to better deliver that 3D sound that you can now get because of the eARC support. You can now pump that Dolby Atmos and those higher bandwidth files through to the Sonos Beam Gen 2. So let's just touch briefly on the design of the Sonos Beam Gen 2. Look, there's not a hell of a lot to talk about. You've got a new polycarbonate grille here on the front. Now this puts it in line with the Sonos eARC design, and the grille has been designed for better acoustic resonance, so hence the change there. It comes in black or it comes in white. I personally think it's quite a sleek design, and look, the cable on it is only about 1.5 meters long. That's it's a bit small for me. I would have liked to have seen just a little bit longer, considering that this potentially could be sitting up on entertainment units or potentially even wall mounted if you went that far. It might be a little bit of a stretch to get to the power point or wherever you've got your power cables going to. Obviously the big thing though is the size here, and when I first took this out of the box I couldn't believe how small it is, to be honest. You're talking 65 centimeters in length and about 10 centimeters wide and only 6.8 centimeters thick, so it's really quite small. It's not much bigger than a PlayStation 5, and my PlayStation 5 is about there. So that's how big it is. You really don't need much space, and that is where the design and the performance, which we're going to talk about in a sec, really combine to produce something pretty impressive. So performance, that's where the Sonos Beam Gen 2 really needs to shine. And look, when I first opened it from the packaging and plugged it in, naturally, I just stuck the volume up as high as I possibly could. And this thing pumps. Like, it doesn't look like a very big piece of tech, but geez, it produces some good quality sound. The volume's loud, but there's no distortion, most importantly. It's good clarity across the frequencies. Although I did notice when I was listening to music, not so much when I was playing games or watching movies, that the highest frequencies were just a little bit tinny, I thought. But, it's not too bad really. And overall, when you're looking at the size of the thing that you're dealing with here and the price range, the sound experience was really quite impressive. When you switch it over to the movie side of things, and I was watching some Dolby Atmos content, like such as Disney Plus, I put on some Star Wars and just those latest Star Wars and just try to get a feeling of the sound ranges. The 3D effect is good. It's not like you'd get from those high-end soundbars, but it's still there, it's still noticeable. It still feels like a definite massive step up from your TV speakers. The bass, same boat, you know, like the bass is pretty good, I thought, for a soundbar this size. Especially when I was playing like Booker Shade or Pinyao or even like J5, there's a bit of bass in those and you could kind of feel the bass, but you know, it's nothing like having a subwoofer. And obviously it's part of the Sonos ecosystem, so you can get a Sonos subwoofer and connect it in. They're not cheap, I will say, but you can connect that in and get the extra bass in down the track should you be able to afford it then or be able to upscale. But yeah, you're not gonna get that kind of like spaceship from Star Wars coming over your head, the whole couch is shaking type bass, but the bass I still thought was pretty good on this. The app experience is really quite solid. Obviously they're trying to cram the entire ecosystem with this app, but the setup is really quite easy. It's got the NFT now for the setup, so you're supposed to just be able to tap your phone, it's supposed to disconnect your Wi-Fi and everything like that. Didn't work for me. It connected the phone fine, but it didn't actually plug into my Wi-Fi data, which is a bit annoying. But the things like the night mode where you can kind of dull the sound, so it's more focused on just keeping your neighbors happy, which I think is important. There's also a speech enhancement mode as well, which is quite good in just bringing the dialogue up if you're hard of hearing or depending on the genre. And overall, I thought the actual soundbar did a really good job with movies and TV of actually pulling the dialogue out and making the dialogue really stand out. Even though you've got this huge soundscape of action and craziness going on. The mic, there's a mic in here as well with the Alexa and also Google Assistant, and the mic also performs better here than it does with the original Beam Gen 1. However, you know, I don't think it's going to use this quite like you might use say something like the Roam, which is more portable. I feel like people are going to place this down and mostly use it for their movies and their TV. Now, on to what isn't great about the performance of this, and that is the lack of any sort of pass-through. So there's a few things that haven't been updated here. There's no Bluetooth, there's no Android, there's support for TruePlay. I should actually quickly briefly touch on TruePlay. TruePlay is awesome. It's especially awesome on something that's portable. At least when you set this up once, it just pings around your house, gets a sense of the volume of your space and changes the audio based on the room that you're in, and it works. Like, it's not just a gimmick, it actually works. But there's no pass-through, and that means that if you want to utilize Dolby Atmos on this and those higher end options when it comes to audio, you are going to have an eARC port on your TV, because that's going to pass through that Dolby Atmos information to the soundbar so you can actually get it. Now, that's not particularly recent technology, and if you've got an older TV, even much earlier than 2020, you're probably not going to have that eARC port, so you're not actually going to get the benefit of Dolby Atmos. It's the big selling point of the Beam 2 to begin with. Now, in my opinion, it should have had pass-through capabilities on the actual soundbar. So when you look at the back, you've only got the one HDMI port, and this comes from your TV to the soundbar. You don't have multiple HDMI ports. Now what this means is, if you've got, say, a Apple TV 4K box or an Xbox Series X or a PlayStation 5, or heaven forbid both if you're that lucky, you can't plug it into here. You have to plug that through your TV. So if your TV doesn't have an eARC port, then that's never getting to here. Whereas if the pass-through is on here, you could plug your Xbox in here, get that Dolby Atmos sound, and then send the signal back off to your TV. So I think that was generally quite a big miss by Sonos on this, because I feel that the price range that it is as a mid-tier option, and the size of it where it's designed to fit under smaller TVs, you're probably not talking tip of the spear consumers here that are likely to have gone out and got themselves a nice big brand new TV with eARC and OLED and all that fancy business. They're possibly operating on older tech, and the fact that you don't have pass-through on this, I feel, limits the use case for a lot of consumers in Australia. Despite that head-scratching decision, the Sonos Beam Gen 2 does a lot with a little. It creates enormous and deep sound with a very, very small footprint. And I feel like if you're trying to upgrade from your TV speakers to something that's a significant step better, the Sonos Beam Gen 2 does justify its price as a mid-tier soundbar solution. Now, I've gotten a full review of this up on the finder.com.au website, and in that review I also compare it very specifically to the Beam Gen 1 and also the Sonos eARC, so I recommend seeing that. You can also see all the features and specs there as well, so make sure you jump on the website and check that out. As for me, I'll see you later.